Hello and welcome to another episode of Out of Spec Dave. A lot of people ask me, "Hey Dave, why do you drive an electric car? And are you like one of these green guys that just wants to save the environment or the planet?" And while there's a certain amount of truth to that, I can't say that's really my main reason. And I got to thinking, you know, I should really jot down or really think about all the reasons why I really like to drive an electric car and share them with you. And maybe some of you would disagree with some of the things I'm saying. Some of you might agree with the things that I'm saying. Unless you start talking about all these reasons why people are moving over to electric vehicles versus not, then you know what? Maybe people won't do it quite as quickly. And I'm okay with that if it takes time for people to do it. But I today would love to share with you the reasons why I drive an electric car. So let's get into it. So one of the first things that everyone says is, "Oh, I do it because it's cheaper. I save money." And I actually do agree with that. But let's do a little bit of math. All right, we'll take an Ioniq 5, a Kia EV6, a Genesis GV60 as an example. It's got a 77 kilowatt hour battery pack. Think of that like the size of your gas tank. You got a 16-gallon gas tank, you got a 20-gallon gas tank. This particular brand of electric vehicle has a 77 kilowatt hour battery pack, 77.4. So if you go to Electrify America and you go from 0% state of charge all the way to 77.4, 100% state of charge, there are two ways that you can pay for that. Forgetting about whether or not manufacturers include free charging sessions with the cars or not. If you just pull up and pay as a guest, it's going to cost you 43 cents for every kilowatt hour. All right. And when you do the math, that comes out to around $33 to fill up the whole car. And that'll give you roughly 225 miles of range, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, but let's just say 225 miles of range. Now, if you buy an equivalent gas car that does, I don't know, let's just say, what I was thinking, gets, let's say 30 miles to the gallon. Okay. Which would basically mean that if you're going to go 225 miles, you'd have to get 7.5 gallons of gas. And that would cost $26.25. So right there, you could buy a gas car that gets 30 miles to the gallon, and you can actually, it's less money at $3.50 a gallon. Now, gas can go to $5. I know from some of my California friends, it could be $6, $7 a gallon. So maybe that's not really holding true. But, it used to be that, back just not too long ago when gas was $5 a gallon, I could definitely make the case that it's so much cheaper to charge your electric car. One of the things you can do at an EA station for $4 a month, you can become a member. And then what you can do is you can buy down the rate from 43 cents down to 31 cents a kilowatt hour. And if you do that, that'll cost you $24. So $24 versus $26.25, it's cheaper. But here's the thing I think a lot of people forget about. Most of the time, when you have an electric car, depending on your living situation, you're not really going to be DC fast charging, meaning going to the high speed, call them superchargers, call them fast chargers, but you're not really going to be charging on the road that much. Now, for some of you who are always on the road, like my son Kyle, the percentage of his cars that are DC fast charged versus being charged AC, whether it's level 1 or level 2 at the home, for us, I would say 90% of the charging that we do is here at home. And we only pay 12 cents a kilowatt hour here in Connecticut. I think they're going to be raising the rates come January 1st with my Eversource. I got an email the other day I didn't really like to read, but let's just say 12 cents a kilowatt hour. Same size battery pack, 77 kilowatt hours. If you go from 0% state of charge to 100%, that's going to cost you $9.25. So that's substantially cheaper. Even if you were to say, I'm going to charge my car 50% of the time, at home on a level 2 versus DC fast charging, even at the buy down rate of 31 cents a kilowatt hour, you're still going to be in that $15, $14, $15, $16 range versus $26. So that's definitely a reason why it's a good thing to drive an electric car. Not the main reason, but it's something to consider. And especially if you charge at home, I think that's a great thing. One of the other things is you don't have to go to the gas station ever. It's like, look, you come home, you plug your cell phone in. The next morning you wake up, your cell phone's 100% charged. You just do the same thing with your car, your electric car. Again, not road tripping. That's a little bit of a different animal. But for the average person who's just buying an electric car as his daily driver or her daily driver, and you're just going out there, there's nothing better than not having to go to the gas station. And so, economically, it's a time saver for you. Time is money. And what invariably happens is when you go to the gas station, you go in there and then you see the Slim Jims and you see, the Drake's cakes and the apple pie. Well, they end up selling you stuff that you don't really need. I call gas stations air stations. I go there when I need air in my tires. The other thing from an economic standpoint is electric vehicles definitely do not require as much maintenance. So you don't have to do oil changes. You don't have to do tune-ups. You don't have to do spark plug changes. Because of regenerative braking, which basically means when you take your foot off the accelerator, it takes the energy and it puts it back into the battery. Brake pad life, it gets way extended. So from a maintenance standpoint, I would say that economically, you're going to overall have a lot less cost of ownership if you look at point A to point B, inclusive of everything. And as long as we're on the top of inclusive of everything, there are some tax incentives as well. Now, it is very true that electric vehicles, on average, are still a lot more expensive than internal combustion engine cars, their counterparts. For example, you buy a Kona EV versus a Kona gas car, it's substantially more money to do that. Now, I know we've had a lot of recent tax changes in terms of the federal tax credits, but if you play the game right and you're careful about what you buy, there are used tax credits right now. There are also state level tax credits on new cars. And so you need to factor that into your overall buying decision in terms of the economic impact to your overall choice. But I mean, when you think about it, in the state of New Jersey, as an example, I live in Connecticut, but this is almost reason enough to move to New Jersey, is there's no state sales tax on an electric vehicle. And then when you combine that with some of the tax incentives, I know they're always changing up and down and what have you. And if you buy the right electric vehicle, at least under the new tax credit laws, you might end up getting still a $7,500 federal tax credit. You might get $4,000 or $3,000 from the state, and then you're not paying sales tax. Then it starts to really change the equation. So look, charging at home, less maintenance, tax incentives, your time not having to go to the gas station to actually fill up your car or wait online, and pump your own gas. And, I think that these are all really good reasons why I like driving an electric car. Cutting emissions, saving planet Earth. I think this is one that is really, I need to learn more about this. I think that clearly the actual emissions that are leaving the vehicle at the point of where you're driving it, sure, it's definitely cleaner. However, depending on where you live in the country and where your energy company that you're charging your car up with is sourcing its electric power from the grid, it still could be coal-fired. It still could be natural gas. It could be hydro. It could be wind. I get all that. There's been a lot of people that are arguing, well, you have to mine Mother Earth with all these precious metals and ship the metals over to where they manufacture the batteries. And then they have to ship the batteries over to where they manufacture the cars. And, to a large extent, there's a lot of shipping that goes on to, building a regular conventional car. But this is one topic that I would love to find two people on the opposite side who are smarter than me on whether or not there truly are electric vehicles truly cleaner to drive. For one, I think on average they are. Like I said, I have to do my homework a little bit better, but that's not a main reason for me to really be buying a car. There's a lot of what's going to happen. People at work are asking me, what's going to happen, Dave, after 5 years when your battery doesn't work anymore? What are they going to do with all those thousands and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of batteries? What's going to happen when we hit that inflection point? I think there's a lot of ingenuity and creativity that's gonna come into the recycling of these batteries, and I think that's an area that I wanna learn more about. Storing perhaps some of repurposing those batteries to store the energy on your wall and maybe combining it with solar so that you can actually balance out the grid a little bit. I think that those are kind of interesting perspectives. But it really comes down to for me, driving the EV, it's just super convenient. Again, I mentioned not having to go to the gas station, but also you don't have to get emissions testing, and you can charge at home, like I said earlier. It's convenient too, especially if you live out on Long Island and you got to commute into New York City and you're on the LIE or some of the roads out in California. If you're a single driver, you're single commuting, you can use the carpool lanes when you have an EV and bypass. And I think you can also use them if you have a hybrid. So you have to look into that for your own jurisdictions. But I think that those are good reasons to own an EV. We can cut down on your commute. I mean, it saves tremendous amount of time if you can't take mass transport, to where you work for whatever reason that is. The other issue is, or one of the other reasons that I love, and this is really the main reason, is they're just fun to drive. I mean, they're super fast. Even like the Chevy Spark, you get into a Chevy Spark or you get into a Kona EV, these things are wicked fast. And there's no gear changing, there's no smell when you start them up. They're fun to drive. They're cleaner to drive at the point of where you're driving them, as opposed to taking the energy from the grid, like I mentioned earlier. But I just love the driving experience. They're just there's no gear shifting at all. It's just super smooth to drive, and also one of the things is I know a lot of the technology has been creeping over into the ICE vehicles, but there's simple things like having an app on your phone. It seems like most of the electric cars come with apps that allow you to precondition the cabin. And I remember years ago when I was a kid, my neighbor, he was actually the principal of our elementary school. Every morning, one of the boys would have to go out and start the car, warm it up, and they would just let the car run, and it would heat up the car. So when they get into it, it would be warm. You can still do that. As a matter of fact, you can put a remote start on a car, on an internal combustion car, and do that. But you know what? What happens if you leave your car in the garage? Unless you have a heated garage, your car is going to be cold when you get in it in the morning, and you can't start up an internal combustion engine car in a closed garage. I mean, you can, but you walk out there, you're going to die from all the fumes, right? So I think that the ability to be able to control your car from if it's in the garage, to be able to preheat the cabin is a great thing. Again, some of this technology is creeping over into ICE cars, internal combustion as well, but over-the-air updates or the ability for these cars to somewhat drive themselves like Teslas do with the autopilot features. And a lot of cars, again, gas-powered cars are getting this, but I think that these technologies, they seem to kind of go hand in hand with electric vehicles. When you take a step back, to me, it's the overall experience of getting in the car. It's freezing cold out. You get into a warm cabin, you pull out of your garage, and you just let it go. You let it rip. If the engine does not have to warm up, a motor is ready to go. The instant torque, the way it drives with regen, it's just the whole feeling about the car that if you haven't driven an electric car, I suggest you do, just to check it out. I don't want to. I'm not here to push everybody to go EV. In time, I think a lot of people will. Maybe not with both cars in their fleet if they're a two-car family, but maybe one of the cars. But the interesting thing that I have found years ago, my wife Kathy and I, we built a house out on Long Island, and everyone was building the house at the same time, and everybody got to know each other as their houses were building because they had something common to talk about. And these EVs, my friend Rob down in Florida, he has an EV6. He said to me, EVs come with friends, and they really do. There's sort of an excitement about something that is a newer technology. For those that have been driving EVs since 2012, Teslas, or whatever, if you've had a Leaf for a long time, you know what I'm talking about. But I'm speaking to the audience out there that either A, isn't driving in an electric car today, which is the vast majority of the people in this country, I know when Kyle goes over to Norway, it's like looking into the future about 5, 6 years, maybe 10 years as to how advanced they are in terms of the percentages of EVs on the road over there. It's just like it's a car, right? You just get in it and you go. And for me, it's kind of that way. But being able to educate people about why an EV is maybe a good choice to consider, I tell people go drive one. And I remember the first time that I drove a Tesla Model S, I could not believe when the salesman he said to me, he said, just go. I said, well, it's on. I didn't even know it was on. It was crazy. Some of the sounds when you put these cars in reverse, you really sound like you're George Jetson in a spaceship or whatever it is. But you just feel like this sense of being part of the future, being part of something exciting, and they just drive amazingly well. And so when you go to the DC fast chargers, whether it's a Tesla supercharger station or if you go to an Electrify America charging station, you're going to talk not to everybody, and I think I'm starting to see this less and less these days, but you're going to make friends and you're gonna exchange phone numbers, and you're gonna talk to each other. You're gonna see someone with a Polestar 2 or an ID4, and you're driving a Taycan, and all of a sudden you're gonna talk about, hey, how fast does your car charge? Or oh, how fast does my car charge? Oh, here's how these stations are up, these stations are down. You have something common to talk about. And I love that. I think it's great. Just by me making these videos here for all of you, here on this channel, it's been a lot of fun just meeting so many different people and hearing their stories. I think that when you're on road trips, there is range anxiety. If you're going to certain parts of the country, it's just not as easy. If you're towing, it's not as easy. There's even when you see a charging station on the map, oftentimes you pull in and we're starting to see lines, of cars waiting to charge, or you'll see charging stations that are down. All right. I don't care which brand it is you're pulling into. Um, if you just don't want the hassle of any of that, then don't take your car on a road trip. Don't DC fast charge, but consider having an electric car and charging it at home if you're living in a situation where you can. A lot of the negativity and the noise that we're hearing about electric vehicles in terms of charging, it really comes from, the public infrastructure that's out there. There's also a lot of noise about cars catching fire and blowing up. And I know that there was an issue with the salt water affecting some of the cars down in Florida. I'm not saying that EVs are perfect. And I'm not saying that ICE cars are perfect. I mean, you think about as a percentage, how many ICE cars are catching on fire and blowing up and really causing damage, because there's so many more things that can go wrong in an ICE car. You got oil in the car, you got gas in the car, you got spark in the car, you got heat in the car. So look, I'm not here to debate whether or not it's safer to drive an electric car than it is an ICE car. I sometimes I get concerned when I see all these news reports about all these electric vehicles, catching fire. But I wonder how much the news media really sensationalizes every time a Tesla catches on fire, as opposed to, the Honda Accord on 95 that you see sitting on the side of the road that caught fire due to an electrical fault or whatever. I'd have to see the stats to be really be able to back that up. But listen, I hope this video helped. I thought it was time for me to at least share some of my thoughts about why I like to drive an electric car. Would I go back to an internal combustion engine car? Yeah, I probably would. I might. You never know with me, whatever happens. But I do very much enjoy the electric cars. I really wish the new Prius was electric because I love the design of that. And I'm not shy to say that. That thing looks pretty sweet. So there's so many exciting brands that are coming out. When I was a kid, I remember the Intel, the 8088, the 286, the 386, the Pentium chip. And that was a fun time in the hardware game. And, I kind of feel like there's so many manufacturers coming out today. The barriers to entry to actually create a whole new car company from the ground up. Look what Rivian has done. Look what Lucid has done. Look what's happening and coming out of China. Some of the, the Neos that are coming out from over there. The Xpangs, there's some great cars that are on the horizon here, and that's not to mention what the major manufacturers of the vehicles are doing, the GMs, the Fords, and all of that, because there's so much happening. It's kind of an exciting time to keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on with the transition from internal combustion over to electric. I don't think it's going to happen as fast as everyone wants it to, or maybe certain people want it to. Let it happen. Let it happen organically. If there are incentives to push it along, that's great. But we can't. I don't think we're going to be able to go from 0 to 60 in a half a second without getting whiplash here as a country. That's just my own personal opinion. Adopt the technology when you're ready. Adopt the technology when it feels right from an economic standpoint. Keep your eye on the used car marketplace. I've seen the used car marketplace really tank in the last few months. It's a good thing, I think. Everything was super inflated there for a while. So you may be able to pick up some good buys on some good EVs out there that are still have a lot of life left in them. So anyway, you have a good rest of your day. It's been fun just sharing my thoughts with you about why I drive an EV. What are your thoughts? Comment down below. If you want to set up a debate on some of the topics that maybe I discussed here, you know what? Send me an email, dave@outofspecstudios.com, and I'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one. Take care now.